Hey everyone, my name is David Metzger. I've been working in the entertainment industry for about 10 years now. I am residing in Budapest, Hungary. In this next couple of tutorials for ArtForge Academy, I would like to show you how I approach working on a sci-fi keyframe concept piece for films and TV. So let's imagine our job is to show a secret sci-fi facility holding some kind of test phase military vehicle. For this project, we have received a photo base showing the backdrop and scene that the imagined shot would be done from. After inspection of the received material, we can start thinking about our approach and to start to gather materials needed for the project. When we're done with that, it's time to start the core idea sketching. For the first step to set the scene up in Blender, we will start to use a program called F-Spy, which helps us to set the proper camera angle and camera position for the picture with setting up the X and Y axes of the perspective. With checking our camera view, we can start blocking in our shapes and model the basic layout of the scene. We will then start to include our figures, which will help us to check the scale and to check where our characters will go in the scene. During this process, we will also start to set our lighting up to show our illuminated areas, our areas in the dark, and thus setting up our focal points and the general mood for the piece. For the next part of the project, we will set up our PSD file, composite our renders together, and also start to distribute our materials. The next step is where the fun begins, where we will start the actual photobashing, painting and designing of our concept. Once we have a general idea about that put down, we will start including our characters to set up the basic story of the piece, which will help us to sell our idea in the minds of our viewers. Having these characters and showing their interactions is key for them to be able to imagine themselves in the scene. So first up, we will start by preparing the picture that we received for the project. We'll convert it to line art for easier handling at this point, define our framing, our perspective, and start blocking in the main idea. Once we have a general feeling about what we want to do, we will use a program called F-Spy, which will help us to define the camera inside Blender. It will have a backdrop with our original image, and we can start populating the scene with the dummy characters. You see, at this point I wanted to continue sketching in Photoshop, but I decided to jump back in Blender and continue there because it seemed easier. I'm using very basic modeling in Blender just to block in the main shapes and start developing the layout of the scene. I think this is a very effective way of making sure that our scale is correct and that the scene actually makes sense. I'm just trying to find our main proportions and the places for the characters to go. I'm just using some very simple shapes to find the design for the tank. I'm also starting to fiddle with the basic lighting of the scene to make sure a focal point is clear. Now I'm trying some secondary shapes, some repeating stuff. And also at this point I thought that maybe showing our tank from another view might be a good idea. You can see at this point I'm using a set of Blender add-ons called QuickTools, and the whole quick set from Gemma and Alexander, which is an absolute game changer in my opinion. It's absolutely worth it to get it, but all of this can be achieved with regular basic vanilla Blender tools as well. I'm trying to simultaneously develop the lighting further as I go on with the shapes to make sure that everything reads as I want it to read. I'm also playing with some volumetrics for a bit of atmosphere. I can constantly keep playing around with the composition like this quickly and easily. The whole point of 3D here is to have a clear reference for myself later for lighting, nothing fancy here, just trying to find my general layout and the lighting that makes sense. At this point, I thought maybe we can use a foreground element to push the story, so I decided to include some drones and to maybe show them in movement too, so we can have a bit of dynamism in this otherwise pretty static scene. We can use arrays, we can copy the drones around. This is where the true power of 3D comes in. Being available to make small tweaks in the composition and the lighting and check it constantly in a new window is huge. And once more, some playing around making sure that the readability is on point and that it serves the purpose of our picture. I would like the main characters and the main vehicle to be readable at this point. After some final playing around with lighting and modeling, it's time to start to do renders and jump back in Photoshop. I've made sure to have my main elements and my characters on separate layers for easier handling. After combining my renders with the original base image, I thought maybe it's a good idea to include another material, so I decided to jump back in Blender and make a bunch of quick renders. Using some flat color renders will help me separate my pieces. I know there are more sophisticated ways in Blender for doing this, but right here I'm all about the quick and dirty and don't want to spend too much time on anything unnecessary. After fixing my main color and playing around a bit with contrast, it's time to start the photobashing and painting phase. We will start to design our vehicle. Now, since this is a keyframe image or an environment piece, not a vehicle concept necessarily, I don't want to be that particular about the design of the tank itself, so I can be a bit more loose in that area. I can start throwing photos together, pushing, pulling things around and just find a general feeling for this heavy machinery equipment right here. I personally find this bit more experimental approach a lot of fun, and I think that translates into the design and the whole image itself. I can start looking for areas of detail, areas of rest. I can just play around until I find something that I like. Using photos for the highly detailed parts can be a huge time saver in my opinion, and let us focus on the whole image more. I'm just trying to find the big relations first and refine things later. Also, using the smudge tool with a square brush and 100% opacity is a very quick and dirty way to play around with hard surface stuff and is very helpful at this stage. Using selections, dragging things around, overpainting them, colorizing them using different layer modes, just using the full power of digital painting. Once you have a general feeling about the main vehicle itself, it's time to jump to minding the characters in the image. Once more, I'm using photos, overpainting them, relighting them to be as quick and effective as possible. I am trying to arrange them with their eyesight in mind so that complements our composition, because we as human beings have a natural urge to follow the eyesight of the characters we're looking at, This can be used as a traveling direction in the composition itself and also help the viewer to immerse themselves in the image. This is where our 3D layout comes super handy, because this way we can make sure that the scale of the characters are correct. I want to have an eye connection between the foreground character and the guy standing on the tank to have a bit of tension, or to maybe suggest an existing connection between them. Maybe this is the moment when one of the scientists is showing the new design to an important person, or suggesting that the main character on the tank and the scientists maybe had some kind of quarrel before. Suggesting some kind of relation between the characters of the image is a great story driver and helps the immersion, because we as humans are empathetic creatures and we are always trying to find the character in the scene that we are entry point to this imaginary world that we are showing. Now that the base is done, we have our main elements in the right place. It's time for some more details, fine-tuning and finalizing our image. Thanks for your attention, I hope you learned something. Be sure to stick around for the second part.